Okay. Trade industry, get ready because we are going to really dive into the trade, okay? And I've got two different generations up here on the stage who have in common that they think some changes need to come to Trade Town, and that's what we're going to talk about. And I don't know if you've had the opportunity yet to listen to the interviews that I've done both with David and with Chad, but they are worth going back to and hearing. Both of them have had very interesting journeys in their business and have learned a lot in part by experimenting with a lot of different things in the industry. Chad, I want to start there because I think one of the messages that we've been getting into a little bit today is experimentation, and you've talked eloquently about some different things that you've tried within Stark to perhaps speak to a broader audience. Tell me a little bit about what you've done and what you've learned as a result.
Sure. Well, first off, I just want to say you guys have done an amazing job with this conference. A lot of the things that I think we're going to talk about, let's give them a round of applause. A lot of the things that I think we're going to talk about were touched on at least lightly in some of the other sessions. Sure. And when we talk about experimentation and in our industry, it's been a challenge because secrecy and exclusivity is something our industry was built on, and it's really what everyone has known forever. And the problem with that is, as the world changes, people are often scared of losing what they have. And so I think as an industry, we've been slow to adopt this mindset for innovation, as I called it on the podcast with you, and slow to try new things because for fear of losing what we have, we never strive for greatness. And this idea of playing to win versus playing not to lose is something that our industry, I think, is getting more comfortable with. And so, the term we use for experimentation is this adaptive experimentation. So experimenting with different things is just one thing, but creating defined tests, essentially, and measuring the success of those tests, whether it's different marketing channels, like I know the Inside talked about before, or different types of partnerships or different pricing strategies. We've done different things to try to touch on all of those in small ways, knowing that it's not going to be a significant part of our business today, but what can we do today to inform what we're going to do in the future? And so if it's creating a less expensive product line that we're selling through marketplaces, or if it's a lower priced product as a whole and selling it through our core channels, those are just some of the things that we're experimenting with to see how do our core customers respond, what excites them, what upsets them, and causes us to kind of pivot again, and how do we reach a larger audience, whether it's because of a perception, a change in what people think we are, to a totally new customer group.
Yeah. Yeah, and David, you talked about this notion of needing to broaden the awareness of our industry, right?
Right.
And you and I, when we were speaking several months ago, you were really thinking about opening a street level location for Sutherland at the time, in part because you wanted to raise awareness among customers who might not know that you're up on the 4th floor of the D&D building.
Right. When I started in 1977, it was a very, very small industry. I was Rose Tarlow, Dennison Lean, Don Gia, Dakota Jackson, J. Robert Scott. Those were all infants with me. We all started together, and it was sort of a cohesive small group of people who really they were ateliers. They weren't geared for mass production. They weren't geared to cater to a bigger community. They needed clients who could be repeat clients over and over and over. And so during that time, it was, I'm sorry, I lost my point there. Point being that as we've grown, the industry at my level, the artisanal level, has felt the pressure quite a bit, and it seems as though, even though it was kind of chic and nice to be obscure and hard to find when I started, it's not inappropriate for a showroom like mine or showrooms like mine across the country to welcome the public. there's two issues. Who do we show our product to, and who do we sell to? And I never had any intention of selling to the public. They don't understand what we do. They don't understand the difficulties. They don't understand. But for them not to know about us is quite a negative. So, as far as I'm concerned, I would have if I had a retail location,
Right.
it would be only to get people's minds working about what can we do. The actual transaction or how that transpires is a given for us. We're not going to deal with the public.
Sure.
So, but the public needs to know more about what we do.
Yeah, yeah. And part of the knowing more, Chad, so one of our conversations this morning was around transparency, right? And this is an issue that particularly the high-end to the trade industry is wrestling with. Where's your mind on this subject now?
Just in general, I mean, the consumer today craves transparency. You know, I think just like legacy companies, our industry is a product of our success. We've done something for so long, so well, that it's hard to change because it worked for so long. And so as it relates to transparency, I mean, it depends what you're talking about, right? So oftentimes people just go to pricing transparency and say, oh,
Right.
everyone should know the price for everything. But that's not the only thing that transparency is included within transparency. So what your business practices are, what your different policies are, and how you handle different situations. Being communicative and transparent about that is, I think, a given in any business today. And just to kind of jump back to something David said in terms of selling retail, you know, and going back to what you said in terms of experiments, you know, Stark opened retail locations around the country starting in 2006,
Yeah.
and of those, 75% of them were closed. So, you know, I'm a huge fan of failure. I think you learn way more about yourself and the world itself when you fail.
Yeah.
Because if you just succeed and you keep doing that, then maybe the failure might be on a much larger scale. And so as it relates to transparency, you know, what are the things that we can be transparent about, and how do we communicate it to whom? You know, my grandmother wouldn't let people take a picture of product in our showroom. She wouldn't let them come in with a camera. Now it's like, oh, please take a picture. Please share it on your social media. You know, if we don't engage the consumer like what David's talking about, then they're just going to have this perception that, you know, even when they work with a designer, hey, I don't want to work with that company because they're snobs. You know, let's go somewhere else that's a little more approachable.
Right. Exactly. And so part of the conversation this morning with the CEO of Artsy in talking about the art world and how pricing is often very hidden in that world, and this notion of the galleries needing to bring more customers along. And one of the most consistent messages that they get is, hey, you know what would make me a better customer for you is if you told me what the darn prices of stuff is, as it turns out. And we're trying to figure that out in the trade. If we show pricing, and so you were talking about the designers earlier, we potentially jeopardize a business model that a lot of our customers currently have as to how they get compensated, right?
Exactly. The issue we have, is this working? Hello.
David's mic, we'll kick that into gear? Yeah.
Hello. Okay. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, okay.
Old school,
Great.
I like it.
Old school, we're gonna, just talk right into the mic. It's on,
Is it on?
let's bring it up. Here, let's take a look. I want you to hold that thought, David, because it's going to be so good by the time you get to it. You're going to have such a good point. Is he up?
Hello?
There we go.
Right.
Okay. Here we go.
Okay, the issue is that we as showroom owners and representatives of products don't have access to the end user. We have to go through someone, and each designer seems to have his own way of working with that client. Often as not, when I have retail customers come in or end users come into the showroom, it's at the request of the designers. They'll call me and say, I want to send so-and-so in, will you allow them? Well, of course we will, but we won't sell to them. So it's just a matter of, we're totally transparent with our community, but and we are with the end user, we just won't sell to them. So I don't know how much more transparent you can get than to say no.
What do you think about that, Chad? What do you think about no as a strategy?
No, it's not a bad strategy. But no, I think it also depends. Every business is different, right? And I think I'm so fortunate and lucky to be in the position I am with the company of the scale of Stark and Scalamandré that we are able to develop a separate product line with a separate brand strategy, a separate visual identity, and at a separate price point with separate distribution. I can understand the challenges for multi-line showrooms that have one location that they're very focused in one area. For us, because of our scale, it gives us the opportunity to try to reach different people with different things. And so, one of our newest initiatives, which I think we kind of alluded to before, is called Stark Studio Rugs, Stark Studio Rugs Essentials, more specifically, right, which is a less expensive, high-quality product that we're selling on marketplaces. And so going back to transparency, before we launched this, we emailed our entire designer community saying, hey, FYI, this is what we're doing. This product is available to direct to consumer. These are the reasons we're doing it. And by the way, you're still protected under the trade protection policy with better pricing, with custom services, with all the things that go along with that. And right. So, being upfront, you got to assume people are going to find out what you're doing. And so why let someone else control the narrative? Going back to transparency, if you do things because you think it's good for your business, stronger businesses help your core customers. And granted, you might have to do different things that in some ways can be considered competing. I mean, we have a wholesale business, right? We sell to stores as well. And sure. In ways, trust me, my salespeople don't like that. But I can understand if a client can get upset about that. But at the end of the day, we're trying to build a secure business because we know who our core customer is. And we have a diversified customer base because we're national. And as long as we continue to communicate to them what we're doing and why we're doing it, and we genuinely believe that what we're doing supports our core customer, which we do in all of our initiatives, right, then transparency is a great thing.
Yeah. Well, and similar for you, David. So, I mean, the Perennials line for you has grown dramatically, right? And is a place where you also can have a wholesale business that can, in part, support the trade business that you have.
That's true, but this has been a pretty, it's been a great ride. We started Perennials out of a need from Sutherland Furniture because our furniture needed cushions, and the only fabrics available were from the marinas. The colors, the textures, lack of, the hard feeling, everything that we had to deal with on the interiors was only available from the marina. And so for us, starting off, we did everything for ourselves. It was only for our own furniture. Then others decided that they liked the color palette, they liked the hand, and so they picked up on it. And we, quite by accident, found ourselves in the manufacturing business. And if any of you are in the manufacturing business, you know that has a life of its own. In order to keep those looms moving and in order to serve the design community to our best of our ability, we were approached by Restoration Hardware, and we are now their largest.
Are you guys familiar with Restoration Hardware? Do you know that brand? Okay. I just wanted to make sure that people could relate.
I don't say that with any trepidation because pro or con, I think they have raised a level of awareness of design for the public in general. So everyone has their own issues and their own stories and so forth, but they came to us and asked us if we would create a line of fabrics exclusively for them, which we did. And it's helped our factory grow. It's helped us become more creative with our core industry and our core customer. And it's been quite a great thing. It's been all about scalability because, as you know, retail can make incredibly larger demands on you than oftentimes the design trade can. But the combination of the two has been very, very successful and very beneficial for us. And frankly, we couldn't have done both without each.
Well, and Chad, you've talked about using some of these other distribution channels as a marketing tool, sure, right? As much as a possible revenue source. So I think, David, you talked about the partnership with RH was an incredible marketing tool for you because you were in that enormous, environmentally unfriendly catalog, Jenna, to your earlier question. But you were on more than 300 pages of that catalog, and it was incredible marketing for you. And so that was very helpful for you. You found that some of these other online platforms, Chad, have been extremely beneficial because you're thinking of them in a different context. a marketing context.
Sure. I mean, similar point there. And I think ultimately it boils down to something that makes teams effective, because at the end of the day, interior designers and trade showrooms, we're like one team, right? We're on the same team selling to an audience. And for any team to be successful, there needs to be a level of trust, right? And so if there are strong relationships these trade companies have with their clients, then the clients will listen to hear why you're doing different things. And so there's two companies, that both spoke today that we use as a marketing channel. One is The Inside, where we did a partnership with Scalamandré,
right.
And the other is Cherish, where we're selling our Stark Studio Rugs Essentials product. And in both cases, what we know is that our core customers, one, are looking there, but two, how many people are looking there who don't come into our showroom for whatever reason? Oh, Stark and Scalamandré don't have the right product for me, or it's too expensive. And what we found is that, yes, we have to pay a commission, yes, it lowers our margin, but if we can reach a new audience and just change the perception of our company one way or the other, that's a good thing. And, we can do it in careful ways. So I kind of talked about Stark Studio Rugs Essentials and how it's basically a prefabricated product to bring down the price. There's no labor cost, there's no waste. But with Scalamandré, we took some of our more well-known patterns, we rescaled them, we recolored them, and we gave these exclusive versions of these patterns to The Inside. And for us, it's a royalty agreement or a license agreement, and we're not going to make significant bottom line dollars because of that. But it's just a way to reach more people and be more present, because there's more noise than ever before in the world, right? Consumers are so distracted, it's impossible to reach them everywhere they are, and so how can we continue to be top of mind when they start working with a designer, or when a designer starts coming into a design center, which, we're fortunate here. We forget about all the designers all around the country who have no access to a design center.
Exactly.
And think about this, right? The designer in the, Oklahoma City, if they want to create an account with every company in the design center, what are they going to fill out 25 applications to go there once? I mean, how much easier is it to create a trade account on one platform? And these are the new types of the designers that are emerging, and they very much work like the new consumer. It's just they're a professional. So these different channels, there's an expense to them, but it's just a new way for us to try to broaden our reach, raise our awareness, and ultimately experiment. And if it doesn't work, like when we first worked with One Kings Lane, which was, we started good and then it turned really bad because our clients got really upset with us, and then we scaled back, changed our strategy, and now we're doing it again in a more thoughtful way. These are the experiences that companies in our industry need to have so that they can build a stronger business.
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, David, at one point you were thinking about possibly looking for a street level location. As you pointed out, rightfully so, it was less about bringing consumers in to shop as much as it was about creating that awareness, that letting them know and seeing your product firsthand. So what you've opted to do instead, at least in the short term, is you're going to be opening a rather sizable showroom in the New York Design Center in the coming months. So tell me a little bit about that thinking and what made you make that decision.
Well, we had multiple needs. We are growing our business here in Manhattan and the surrounding states, and our business here has been incredible. We actually need more office space. We also find that in moving to 200 Lex, we were fortunate to find a ground floor space, which we're very excited about. That building seems to be more in tune with the industry than Uptown. But there are a lot of people seemingly from downtown that don't go up and uptown that don't go down. So
New Yorkers, we're that way.
We're trying to find a way to service Greater Manhattan and to add staff to our team, because our crew is doing a beautiful job and they need more support. They actually need more elbow room, and so it seemed a natural thing to do. And under no conditions would I abandon the design industry. You have been our lifeblood for as long as we've been in business, and you will continue to be. As I said, we have no intention of going retail, but we do need exposure. And in that regard, I think that the internet has helped us. In terms of, we find many firms who have associates who are fresh out of college who've never been to a showroom. We try to bring them in groups so that they get a chance to touch and feel. So many of them are so happy being on a computer and thinking they can solve all the world's problems. But you certainly can tell quality and and understand why things are expensive or long deliveries once you see them in person. So that's always been our business model. We're not ready to knee-jerk out of the showroom business dedicated to the design professionals, because that market's growing too, and we think that we will continue to be and want to continue to be an important part of that.
Yeah.
Gentlemen? So I think you said something great there in terms of, we're not abandoning the trade. It's a terrible business decision for any company who services designers to abandon them. I mean, why would you want to go after a consumer who buys a home product once every couple of years, versus someone who could have an active business buying every month?
Yeah.
I mean, just bottom line business decision, it's a bad decision. But where I think you're onto something strong, David, is the showroom is going to continue to be a vital part of our industry, but people are coming in less. They're sitting more in their computers. They're clicking more. They're calling more, and they're not actually coming in. It's like a whole schlep to even just leave the office, let alone go to a design building. And where I think is going to be huge change over the next 2-3 years is how technology will evolve to supplement the showroom visit. So technology is not going to replace the showrooms, but how can it enhance the showroom experience? How can companies develop systems or processes where someone can start online and finish offline, or start offline and finish online? Making that one cohesive experience, so that way the busy designer who doesn't have time to spend 60 minutes in the showroom, but instead has 10 minutes, how can they get that same value out of a 10-minute trip instead of a 60-minute trip?
Yeah.
And that's where I think there's an untapped market right now for what's going to happen. And obviously, if it was simple, everyone would be doing it. But it's expensive and it's unknown. But that's where I see a huge change in terms of the future of the trade, as we're talking about, is more usable technology to make a more cohesive online-offline experience.
Well, and David, and so earlier today in our discussions with Andy Dunn and from Bonobos and some of the other entrepreneurs, this notion of omni-channel today and what it means, right? And so having this great online experience, but also having this great physical location experience. And you talk about this all the time, is that, wow, if that designer has made the effort to get to the 4th floor of the D&D building, I better have a damn great experience waiting for them in the Sutherland showroom.
And I think that's true, and I think that if Restoration Hardware has done anything, they've created an experience. And I think they've made other people sort of step up their game a bit. And I think that also needs to happen in showrooms. You've got a ringer here, Rocky LaFleur from Needle for Share in LA. They run a beautiful showroom, several beautiful showrooms. And they're just the height of the market, the epitome of what the design business is about. And I think all of these other things can be ancillary. We can do the internet, we can do email blasts, we can do mailings, we can do events, we can have brand ambassadors, we can do all sorts of things that can enhance the experience. And I think that's really what we're hoping to do, is to reach out a little bit more and to inspire designers to come in and to see what we have. That's very important.
Can these highly specialized businesses, Chad, survive long term if we don't broaden the market beyond simply the trade?
Yeah, I mean, they absolutely can survive, but it depends on what the goals of the business are, right? I mean, you can have a specialized store that's a boutique store with an overhead structure to support a specialized business. The problem that a lot of the legacy companies in our industry have is they have these long leases with huge showrooms that is not the best use of their capital today. So a lot of the problems that people are having today were created because the market's changed faster than their ability to restructure their costs. So is it possible to survive as a small one-shop boutique? Absolutely. But being a multi-line showroom without an inventory is challenging, right? Because when you're just selling other people's product, you have a much lower margin if you're just making a commission. The model needs to be, in my opinion, a combination of inventory product, non-inventory product. You know, I believe that the future luxury consumer is not going to want brands or products all from the same brand. So the days of someone walking into RH and buying the whole room, I think that's going to slow down, because you look at fashion, right? Someone doesn't buy an entire outfit from the same company. They have, you know, pants from one company, shoes from another, a shirt from another, and so that, I think, is always going to be the case for the luxury consumer, as well as custom is always going to be something that the luxury consumer wants. They're never going to want something that their neighbor has. And so the combination of those two mean that the trade's always going to exist. It's just, you know, the model is changing. The high touch, high price model that every designer was forever is not the only model anymore. It's now models of low touch, low price, utilizing technology to provide just basically a consulting service for very low cost, and now everything in the middle is starting to fill in. And so I feel like that's kind of how it's evolving as it relates to, you know, the designers. But as a showroom, yeah, absolutely, going back to your question, they can survive and be boutique-y. They just have to structure their costs that way.
I think my concern is I started the business because I didn't have any money, and
He's well past that stage now, however. FYI.
There were artisans all around the country and all around the world who needed an audience. They needed someone to sell so they could continue to make a living doing what they loved. And for me, that's going to be the hardest part, is to where do those people find an outlet if for their creativity, if the rents in all of these buildings are going through the roof as though they were law firms. This is, to me, one of the biggest issues with not a showroom like mine, because I'll find a way, but there's so many people out there who make so many beautiful products that we strive to find those and to bring them to the design communities. And you know, in a way, we're sort of Medicis in that regard. We look out for the newest thing and the most creative thing and the best quality, and price be damned, it's not our money. So you know, price has never been a consideration. It's always been about design, and it's always been about quality. And I love finding a new source somewhere out in the boondocks of Connecticut to bring to my showrooms. That's one of my greatest pleasures.
Well, and to your point, David, I started off the conference talking about this notion of bringing our industry forward and catching up to where technology is, but in the process, not losing what is so special about our industry. I want Mike Gracie's wallpaper, I'm looking right at you, Mike, I want that incredibly beautiful wallpaper to be available forever. I never want people to not have access to that. And I get it, to your point, not everyone can afford Mike Gracie's incredible wallpaper, and I can't, so, but, you know, I'm just one example, but I mean, but I want that to be sustained. And I want so many of the special products that you bring into your showroom and that you make available to people to be available. And I feel like we're duking it out with these great big consumer companies that just have deeper pockets and can better promote and can better get their product out there, and so much of the market is settling for their product because they simply don't know the magical things that so many of the companies in this room make and make possible.
Sure.
And so that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Our industry actually went retail about 20 years ago, when a lot of the retailers changed their price lists and came into the design centers as though they were offering something new and special. It was just a different price list. It was the same product. And it created kind of a false economy from these people who owned all the design centers around the world. And they kept thinking, around the country, and they kept thinking that, wow, this is such a great business, and here's somebody taking a 40,000 square foot showroom, and here's somebody taking a 15,000 square foot showroom, and it all looked so big, and it looked so successful. And then in 08 and 09, we start seeing these big box companies back away. But there's always been the gems. There's always been the fine tuning, the fine elements of our industry if you look hard enough. And that's the area that we want to be in and we want to stay in.
Yeah, and you bring up the direct-to-consumer companies and how they're so disruptive and people are selling for them. It goes back to, well, as an industry, as individual companies, as showrooms and design centers, what makes us different? And we're talking about the trade, and it is really our focus on the trade, but this idea and what trade only means to everyone, I think restricts us. If people think of it in a different light and say, is it trade only or is it trade preferred or something like that? That's really what our industry has become, is we're creating custom services, exclusive product. We're engaging an audience at a larger scale. We're letting them see our products. We're bringing them in. We're creating special product lines just for them. But at the end of the day, we'll always be a trade-first industry, a trade-preferred industry. And when people have that mindset, it broadens the ideas of what you might be able to do to build a stronger business. Because to your point, without strong businesses, it doesn't matter how much we try to protect what we have, there's going to be no business. And by changing the dialogue and saying, what can we do that's different, is really focus on developing for the trade, on protecting the trade, on giving real trade discounts, on giving real trade exclusive services. That's how we'll differentiate ourselves from these e-commerce direct-to-consumer businesses.
Okay. It's a huge conversation, and obviously we're not going to solve all of the challenges, but I think we've brought the conversation forward, and it needs to continue. So I appreciate you both joining me. Will you please give a big round of applause for Chad and David, and thank you very, very much.